it right. So this it, I got it a lot that it's not IT, it's just an it, the English it. So just as a short introduction story, so for a while now I've been working with a team in some kind of innovation team, building a lot of prototypes with different technologies, with cloud, with UI5, with machine learning, with pretty much everything. We were trying a lot of stuff. The idea was to evaluate technologies and find something that we could present to a customer and ideally sell it and turn it into a product. And this process took on average around 3 months. So until we ramp up the team into Java development and SAP HANA, back then HANA Cloud Platform, microservices, all the stuff. And as a developer, this was really, really cool. I got to play around with a lot of technology and got paid for it. But in the end, ultimately, for the company, it was not always a good idea because they spent a lot of time and money in building something, and not everything was successful and not everything was turning into a product. So I started researching how can you shorten this period. So this period where you build a prototype, where you make something, make a concept, and you have something to show. And I got to some nice things from the internet, of course. So the full title of this presentation is Make Sure You're Building the Right It Before You Build It Right. So how many people, I assume here you all have something to do with technology. How many of you have you ever been involved in a project in building some, let's say, an application? You don't have to be a developer. You can be a project manager, designer, consultant, business consultant, product owner, however you want to call it. How many were involved in such a project? Is there somebody who was not so much? Okay, and of these projects, it doesn't have to be at the moment, in the past, how many of these failed? Or how many were unsuccessful, and not because of bad implementation, so not it was a technical debt, but because the idea was not good? So yeah, this was happened to me also more often than I would like to think. But this is the sad truth. So I started researching a bit, how can you shorten this, and how can you get this validated feedback from a customer or somebody in the end, an end user, if you're building something in-house. And yeah, got the point. So what is this right it? So what is this it I'm speaking of? So it's something that is non-trivial. It's something that takes a lot of effort. It can be money, time. It takes a lot of resource, a lot of dedication to bring it through. But you are not sure if it will be something that will be a success. So there are some nice acronyms for it. One is idea to test. And my favorite is innovation to try. So why? Why is it important to build the right it? And here are some statistics which don't mean to shock you or demotivate you. You should go on and try things. But actually, 90% of mobile apps don't make any money. So you have to think that the Play Store, the App Store are filled with applications that a lot of developers took a lot of time, a lot of dedication to build, but in the end they don't make any money. So they are pretty much worthless. Or that 4 out of 5 startups, and we are here in a startup accelerator, 4 out of 5 startups actually lose money for their investors. So you could say that by definition, if you don't have the right it, you must have the wrong it. So let's have a look at a story that explains a bit how this works. I'm not sure if it's really true. I gave this talk before, and one guy who actually worked at IBM at this time, he said, yeah, they actually ended up doing this, but it was not so big project, so not a lot of people know about it. So this one is called the IBM speech to text. So this was a few decades ago, before the internet. Like in the 70s, 80s, people were not used to typing. They were really inefficient. So you were typing with one finger, they were really slow, and they didn't like keyboards. So at this time, IBM was known for two main products. One was the mainframe, so the really powerful computers, and the other one was their typewriters. But the people who could type were not so many. They were mostly writers, programmers, and some secretaries. Everybody else hated it, and they were trying to avoid it as much as possible. So IBM came to this idea that we could build this speech to text and started pitching it to different customers, different people. And everybody said, yeah, we love this idea and we would like to have such a product, such a device. So they said, yeah, okay, this makes sense. We are a big company, we have the money, we have the budget, we can do it. But luckily, one person there was not completely sure that this makes sense and this is an actual product that people would want in the end and would pay for. So what they did is they got a group of people from these ones who said, yeah, for sure, they want the product, they like it, they love it. They put them in a room with a monitor in front of them and a microphone, but no keyboard. and they said they built the first version of the product, and they would like them to test it for a day. So they started, and as they were talking, the text was magically appearing on the screen. And initially, they loved it and said, yeah, this is really great. This is such a brilliant idea. But by the end of the day, there were some drawbacks. So the people who said they love it and they would definitely buy it, they kind of changed their mind. And they said, yeah, OK, talking all day to the computer creates a very loud, noisy work environment. So you wouldn't like to see it in an open office with a lot of people and they are all talking in the same time. Second, if you talk the whole day, your throat gets sore. And third, what do you do if you have any kind of confidential information? So you have to update somebody's salary. You're not going to go in the corner and say, please update, select from. So in the end, the ones who said, yeah, for sure, they would buy it, they decided, yeah, maybe we don't want it, and it's better and easier to teach people how to use the keyboards, which we see nowadays in every Starbucks shop. Everybody's typing ahead. It doesn't matter if they are a developer or a writer. They are all using the keyboard, and everybody enjoys it. So luckily, IBM didn't invest a cent in this, so they didn't build anything. What they did is they called this the IBM speech-to-text experiment. And what actually happened in the room next door, they had a really skilled typist who was listening to what the group was saying, and he was writing it on the computer. So again, I'm not sure if it is really true 100%, but the idea is that they avoided a disaster. So investing in such a product decades ago, the computing power was not there. The algorithms were not yet developed. Even today, we saw there are still a bit of difficulties working with such a speech-to-text with a chatbot. So I have a question now for you, or let's raise the hand. How many people think this is a prototype? Prototype. OK, and for randomly somebody tell me who doesn't agree that this is a prototype, how would you call this thing? Idea?
I would call it experiment.
Experiment, OK.
Yeah.
But now think about, OK, it's an experiment, that's clear. But how do you do it when you're in a corporate environment? So I'm going to my boss, to my manager, and I say, hey, I need money for my next experiment. What do you think the result will be? So while researching the internet, I found a really nice term for it. It's called pretotyping. So it's not a typo. And it says a definition. It says, simply put, pretotyping is the art and science of faking it before making it. And there is even a website, pretotyping.org. So as a short disclaimer, this concept comes from this guy, Alberto Savoia, who is a former Google engineer. And he made this Pretotype It. It's a manifesto. It's free online. You can download it, and it's really interesting. And he also wrote a book, The Write It, which you can find on Amazon. And through this presentation, I'm also referencing this great book from Eric Ries, The Lean Startup. So pretotyping. Now that we know what it is, let's see what's the difference between prototyping and pretotyping. So here there are some different questions which these two concepts answer. So for prototyping, the most important question is, if you're a developer, is can we build it? Do we have the knowledge? Is the technology ready? Then will it work as expected? So the chatbot, we can build it. It kind of works, but it doesn't really work at the moment how we expect it to. But it's getting there. How much would it cost? Which now technology gets cheaper and cheaper. And how fast can we make it? This is also very important. While pretotyping answers only one question. Is this the right thing to build? Does it make sense? And when the answer is yes, then you go from pretotyping to prototyping. Another big difference is that prototyping normally takes days, weeks, or months. In my case, all the prototypes took months to build, while pretotyping should take minutes, hours, maximum days to prepare. So to put a microphone and the monitor in a room and bring the people together is not so costly, and it doesn't take too much time. And as I'm a big fan of Dilbert, so what is the idea here is to fail. So you maybe are familiar with this. You have to try again, and ultimately, but not always, you succeed. But it's also important when you try again, and I'm missing something here. OK, I don't have an animation. Normally, it's try again, and move on. And this is something a lot of people find it really hard to, when they fail with an idea, that they just drop it and pick up the new thing, but they try and try again in an endless loop. So the idea here is fail fast, fail often, and move on. And we have, according to Pretotyping, we have what is known as the law of failure. And the law of failure is that most new its, so it can be a product, a software, a service, a book, whatever, they will fail even if they are flawlessly executed. And by most, it's 70 to 90%. So this means that achieving failure, if you're building something that nobody wants, what does it matter if we accomplish it on time, on budget, with high quality, with a beautiful design, like Fiori 3.0. In the end, if nobody uses this application we are building, it's a fail. So we could say that achieving failure is the same as successfully executing a bad plan. And let's say we have an idea. So how do we fail? We have 3 ways to fail. We have an idea. We can do nothing with our idea. This is the easiest way to fail, but then we cannot succeed. We can go for it and go all in and do this thing, or we can give it a try. So give it a try is the Pretotyping, but what does it mean to go for it? So here we have what is called the evil twin of Pretotyping. This is product typing. So product typing has another definition. Build it right, even if you are not sure you are building the right it. This means if you are focused on technology, you are building some cloud application, you will focus a lot on making continuous integration, continuous deployment, installing Git's technology, but you don't have an idea that makes sense and nobody will pay for it, even though you have all these cool gadgets and this cool technology. So product typing is the way most new products are developed. And it's also the reason why most failures are slow, painful, and expensive. And here the best example is Google+, which was finally killed last year after years of dragging it. So don't product type it, Pretotype it. So how do you Pretotype something? And here I have some of the techniques, which are from Alberto Savoia's book. I only picked up some which I could apply in SAP ecosystem, SAP environments, and which I think make sense and are really easy to use. So the first one, and the easiest one, is the mechanical Turk. So what is the mechanical Turk? The mechanical Turk was this device built in the 18th century in the Austrian Empire, which was sort of an autonom of playing chess. So it was this machine that you could play chess with. But in reality, it was just a really skilled, small chess player hidden inside this big box who was moving the pieces around. And this one they displayed all around the empire, and people thought they were actually playing against the machine. So here the idea is to replace complex and expensive computers or machines with human beings. But it doesn't have to be only computers or machines. It can also be algorithms or things which are not there yet, but you want to see if people would actually need it, like the speech-to-text. And Amazon, with Amazon Web Services, they offer a really nice service for this. It's called the Amazon Mechanical Turk, and I like this artificial intelligent. So this is a service which you can subscribe to, and you pay for it. It's not that much, but they have people behind it who simulate the machine learning. So if you want to make like a chatbot in your organization that does something, you could simulate it for a period, see if people like it and actually use it, and then go ahead and implement it. So this is the mechanical Turk. The second technique is called the Pinocchio. So the Pinocchio, the idea is to build a non-function, lifeless version of your product. So something like a clickable mockup. So in the SAP context, you normally use this really brilliant tool called SAP Build, which you can find at sapbuild.me, which I wanted to show to you, but then I found something even cooler. So SAP Build is a really nice way of making fast, clickable prototypes. So this is just the same, it's not a video, where you can actually draw something on a whiteboard, and then you can import it in this tool and make like pages out of it, and you can make hotspots and navigate and click around. And then you can immediately send it. It generates a URL, like an application, and you can send it to your end users, and they can already give feedback, like for this order creation or something like this, do I look for the button, where do I look for it? And it even has a really nice feature with some heat maps that it shows you where the user was looking for stuff. So you give them a task, like here's the product list, and you want to order a product, and you look where they are looking for the new order product, and so on. So you can adjust the design in time. And then you can slowly replace this with actually Fiori. You have a drag and drop tool. It's really cool. But, so build.me, I found something which is even cooler and which I think will be the future. And this is this thing. So this is a startup from Romania, from my home country, that use TensorFlow and machine learning and analyze what you are drawing on the whiteboard and generates HTML code, which is responsive. It's not UI5, it's React, but it can be adapted. So the input field and everything are determined in the same way. So this means you can just draw an application on the whiteboard and send the URL to a customer to try it out. And I think this one is, so it's not a generated code, you would have to adapt it, but build also makes generated code in the end. So it's fully responsive, it's a really cool tool. And this is a Romanian startup, it's called Teleport HQ. And this thing is called Think to Code. So this is the Pinocchio. Now we have the third one, and this one maybe you're familiar with. It's called the minimum viable product, or MVP. So here the idea is to build a functional version of your product application, but stripped down to just basic functionality, so just to get feedback. And here we have a nice quote from Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, who says, if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. And this is very often the case. So how do you build an MVP? So I'm sure most of you know this picture. So the idea is to build something functional, but make it incremental, like in a Scrum approach. So this is how you would build it. You start, you build the wheels, you have the wheels, you ship it to the customer. Now, if you're the customer and you order the car, but it should come in half a year, and after a few weeks you get the wheels, you will say, okay, it's great, but what should I do with them? Okay, this is good feedback. The team, we go back to the lab, we develop more. So we add the chassis, and we ship it to the customer. So the next sprint is over, we have the next incremental, here it is. Said, okay, but where do I sit, or how should I use this thing? Okay, I will write it down. We go back and come eventually with the car. And the feedback from the customer will be, why didn't you send me this from the beginning? So this is not how you build an MVP. You build an MVP like this. So you don't focus on the car, you focus on the request. So what is the target? What is the customer? The customer can be your end user or actual company. What are they trying to achieve? So in this case, they want to get from point A to point B. So you build a bicycle and ship it to them. They travel from point A to point B, and the feedback is, I would like to go faster. So it's not really, but you strip an engine to the bicycle, you ship it to the customer, they can now go from point A to point B much faster. So they like it. But now they said, yeah, they want to take some other things with them, maybe their friends, colleagues, if it's raining. So you build a box around the bicycle, a motorcycle, you ship it, and you kind of have a car. So the idea is to collect a maximum amount of validated learning about the customer with the least amount of effort. And here it's where a lot of companies fail on this validated learning, like with the shipping the wheels versus shipping a bicycle. And this one, there is also often the case that we build MVPs in this way. So we think always about functions. So we want to ship function after function after function until we get a process. But we don't think about building something like this that includes also emotional design. Why do our customer want to come back? Why do they want to use this product that we are building? So it's usable, is it reliable, but do they love it? If they love it, they will come back even if it's not fully functional compared to this one. And this one is called the MLP, or the minimum lovable product. So the third technique, minimum lovable product. The fourth technique, it's called the Provincial. So what is the Provincial? The idea here is before you're launching worldwide, and worldwide can mean anything, inside your organization, inside your region where you're doing business, you should run a test on a small sample, so a small group. So this can be, if you think SAP, ERP systems, you have systems all around the world, company codes, special regulations, legislation, and so on. You build an application, but you want to target only one group of people and see what their feedback is. It doesn't make sense to implement it for everybody from the beginning. And this also, you can apply this Provincial also on the features. So if you can forget about IATN, for example. You can say if you're building a mobile app, it doesn't have to be Android and iOS. You can just go with one because the people will give you feedback for it. So there are a lot of costs in a product which are generated by adapting this product to work on every market or every company code, you would say, or something like this. The fifth technique, it's called the fake door. So the fake door, the idea here is to create a fake entry for a product or a feature. It works mostly on features that doesn't exist yet in any form. So this one, the book example is that you are writing a book, or you want to write a book about something, but you don't know if people would like to buy it or download it or read it. So what you do is you make the title of the book and the URL, and you send emails, and then you count how many people click on this one, how many people actually want to download your book. And if there are a lot of them, then it makes sense to go ahead and write it. Otherwise, you can forget about it. And this applies also to features in enterprise software. So you can make sort of fake buttons. You're making a new Fiori application, and you're thinking to make some button to export it to an Excel. This is often a requirement. But do people actually use this feature? Because this takes, in some cases, it's really easy, but in some cases, if you're building such a feature, it takes some effort to do it. And if it's just one person using it once, it doesn't make sense to do the investment. So what you would do is you would put a fake button, and behind it, count how many people actually click on it. So if you have a lot of users, and a lot of them are looking for this function, like a filter, let's say, then it makes sense to build it. If nobody actually clicks ever on it, it doesn't make sense, and you can exclude it from your application. And the last technique from this one is called the pretend to own. So the idea here is that some its require a lot of investment. So buying licenses, buying software, buying hardware, and so on. And the idea is how you could skip this and just borrow or rent such expensive items. And here SAP has some nice features. So the first one is, of course, the SAP Cloud Platform trial account, where you can already try out most of the stuff which is there and see if it makes sense and if you have something that you could introduce to your end users, to your customers. I recently used this S4HANA fully activated appliance. So this is in the Cloud Application Library, which is just a fully configured S4HANA system which you can just showcase, and you can actually build inside it and extend it. And it doesn't cost you the full S4HANA license. And as we saw today in the morning, this conversational AI from SAP, it's also a trial version which you can go ahead and try, and you don't have to pay anything. So the idea here is to be a cheapskate until you know you have the right it. So all these licenses are quite expensive, and if you're building something that nobody wants, it doesn't make sense to pay them. So these are the techniques. But are there any ethical considerations? So for example, is it right to create this fake door just to see if people click on it? Are you not sort of lying to your users, to your customer? In a way, you are doing it, but if you think about all the products you ever bought, which you think you wanted, and you use them once and then threw them away, or you never use them, it kind of makes sense not to invest and not to spend effort and time to build something which nobody wants, even if you are sort of lying to your users. And the only way to validate this is to test it. So how do you test it? And here we have the data beats opinions. So every idea you tell somebody, they will say you either it's a bad idea or it's a great idea. But how do you validate it? So how do you get some data out of it that you can make sure it makes sense or not? And here we have two metrics which you can use. And the first one is really simple. It's called the initial level of interest, or ILI. And it has a simple formula. It's number of actions taken divided by the number of opportunities for action offered. So how many people saw your button and how many people clicked on the button. And based on this, you can make a decision if it makes sense or not to make the investment. And sometimes, so if in the case of the book example, so if you have a button, download my book, people will, even if they want your book, they will click once. They will not repeat this one. But sometimes you have the case where you have a feature or a function which people should use over and over again. And in this case, this ILI stuff you cannot use because it only validates it once initially. So the second one is the ongoing level of interest, or OLI, which is usually displayed as a time-based graph or a table. So here we have the time and the level of interest. So the ILI calculated over a period of time. And you have an acceptance level. And this one you can choose wherever it should be. When does it make sense and when doesn't it make sense to use it? And in the first example, we have at the beginning a lot of users download your app from the Play Store or the user application. But over time, less and less and less people. So they lose interest. In this case, it doesn't make sense to do it. Another example is where you have an initial spike. then it goes down, but it stays steady at a certain level. And here, depending on your acceptance level, you can choose, does it make sense, does it not make sense? And of course, the ideal example is when it just goes up and up and up, and people love it and want it more and more. So you have to try it. And as a summary, so now you know what pretotyping is. You know why is it important. So some of the techniques, like this MLP, Pinocchio, and so on. What data to collect and what metrics to use. So don't forget to think big, start small, and learn fast. Thank you very much. So a bit ahead of time. Questions?
Oh, yeah, we have time for questions. Any questions? Come on, it was too good. There must be questions, of course. Anna.
Well, first of all, I agree with everything you've said. So I'm not going to question the authenticity of any of it.
I didn't say I made it up. It's from this guy from Google. He developed everything.
Perfect.
I gave credit always.
But how do you push this into an organization? How do you push this onwards to managers who just say, no, we're going to sit down and have a meeting, and then we'll figure out what it is at this meeting? Because I struggle with that, with design thinking.
Okay, so in my experience, it was that the managers were pushing us to build new prototypes, something that they could show to customers, and the idea was how to ship these ones faster and how to reduce the cost so we can build more and more. And it's hard. I don't have an answer for you to this.
Well, if you find one, please let me know.
So I have one example where we had, since then I've switched jobs, so now I'm working as a consultant, but I had a company where we were trying to turn a really old monster of a SAP GUI application, which was this one tool to rule them all, where they had 10 different roles which were using this application, and they had one project office who they were just had to go to this application and navigate to some tabs, check a figure, and press a button. This was their only task. But they had to do it only once a month. So the idea was that every month they had to read the documentation again because they didn't know how to use this application. And they said, yeah, we want to go to Fiori and role-based and so on and switch this one into smaller applications. But just for this, start just with this user. And we looked at it, we made some design and so on, but the investment was really high because this application was all together. So we would have had to refactor everything. It would have been really costly. And in the end, we asked, okay, you want Fiori, but do you want to use it on a mobile phone, on a tablet? No. This project office sits with 2 monitors, has some Excel files, which the figures, has to check them in the SAP and just confirm it. And in the end, we just used screen personas and just simplified the UI to just this figure. And this was much cheaper and easier. So this was kind of an example. Great answer.
Yeah. Introduce it by experiments. If you have a self-organized team, right? Just hide it in your backlog somewhere. Should work. More questions?
I don't have a question, but maybe as a correlation to your question, in my company, we kind of, as developers, pushed build.me as a platform to do prototyping, and this was kind of a bottom-up approach. I'm a developer. I'm a nobody. I have no influence whatsoever, and just by injecting this tool, just by doing it, we kind of got into the whole Fiori track, and then into the whole, there's something like design thinking. What's that? We haven't done that for the past 50,000 years. Maybe we could do it now. And I think at some point you might have to, as a normal employee, you have to push these ideas in contrast to hoping that the management will inject it into a company. Just for an idea.
But
it seems to work.
This should be really easy to sell to managers because the idea here is to reduce costs. So they should love it by default.
In public sector, it usually doesn't work because we've done it in a certain way the past 20 years, so we're going to continue with that. And you kind of need to breach that just by doing stuff. My experience.
Yeah. More questions? Because we have something exciting coming up. For one, it's a break where you can drink water. And then we want to do a group photo with everybody, of course. Right? So, Tudor, thank you very much. I think that was a fantastic session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Very applicable.